Aquaculture, I like this one. The art of cultivating the natural produce of water. Okay, it's not necessarily fish, it's not necessarily plants, and there's definitely an art to it. Another is farming of aquatic organisms in natural or controlled marine or freshwater environments. So aquaculture, you are controlling an environment. Husbandry of organisms in an aquatic ecosystem. A tank is not just water, it's an ecosystem. You have bacteria, you have other things growing in there. A rearing of aquatic organism under a controlled or semi-controlled conditions. Okay, so we are applying some sort of a control to the system that they're in there. And mariculture, it tends to be an older name. It's not used too much anymore, but it's aquaculture in marine or brackish water. You'll see that used. So aquaculture started. There's info in Egyptian tombs at 2500 BC. There was tilapia being shown cultured in ponds. Carp were cultured as early as 2500 BC in China. In England, 1500 AD, carp culture was introduced. In the United States, 1877 was the first fish hatchery in Oregon. So world aquaculture is very diverse, and I'm just going to show you some pictures of different types of aquaculture. We're going to go over. Is that enough light for everybody? So you have shrimp ponds lined with mangroves in certain regions of Asia. This is obviously not the most sustainable way to have the mangroves on the side. And you'll hear a lot of bad information about aquaculture. This doesn't exist very much, just so you know. And most of it has been replanted and regrown, and it's now the shrimp are raised in a more sustainable way. Most of these are canals or something where there's a coastal water exchange. They're these high intensity systems with repeated units over and over and over. This is the world's largest shrimp farm, which is in Fellsmere. It's the size of 4 football fields, I believe, inside the building, and it keeps moving on. And open ocean aquaculture. Okay, this is a large cage suspended underwater. Food fish. There's many species raised. Ornamental fish, bait fish is common in regions with minnows, shiners, goldfish. There's stock enhancement, and this is for salmon. The salmon, wild-caught salmon, there's a huge number of them cultured and let go to go out and give the to use the natural resources, and then they return back to the same stream they were released in. And so natural stock enhancement. People say, oh, it's wild salmon, but a lot of those are cultured or hatched in hatchery and then released. So they are natural, but they did have aquaculture applied to them in a controlled environment at some point in time. There's trout farms all over the country. Striped bass is a large industry. I'll show you a little about that. And then there's several marine fish for food and for stock enhancement. Commonly cultured crustaceans. Pacific white shrimp is the most commonly cultured shrimp in the world, and it's commonly cultured in the U.S. And freshwater prawns are not as common. They're common in China and Indonesia. And crabs, there's not a lot of crab culture because of the larvae are so difficult. Crayfish or crawfish is very common throughout the Gulf states. Louisiana is king of crawfish aquaculture. Lobsters are cultured in some regions, both spiny lobsters and clawed lobsters. And brine shrimp, which is probably known as sea monkeys, little tiny crustaceans that are used for food for larval fish and juvenile fish. There's lots of clams, oysters, mussels, abalone. There's lots of different mollusks that are cultured. This is actually a low tide situation. And they go out and they clean them, observe them, and then the tide comes back up. We have a large clam industry here in Florida, and there's some oyster culture as well. Leroy will talk about that. Some seafood products. Kelp is raised for abalone. They also use it to extract nutrients and put into lotions, hand lotions, different things like that. It's taken and put into food products. People don't realize, but corals and sponges, there's Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute right up the road has a division, and they look at medicines and things that, compounds that can be removed from corals and sponges and incorporated into medicines for humans. It's also used in the aquarium trade, and there's a live rock industry here in Florida. It's actually taking coral rock and allowing organisms to colonize it and then selling it for the aquariums, for reef tank aquariums. So world aquaculture in 2013, there was about 97 million metric tons of aquaculture production worldwide. This is about $157 billion. There was 70 million metric tons of food products by weight produced by aquaculture. And China is by far the largest producer in the world, with somewhere around 2/3 of the world's production. So you hear a lot of things about aquaculture is the fastest growing section of agriculture. The way to word it properly is aquaculture is the fastest growing animal food production sector in the world, and its annual growth is 6.9% per year. It's doubled in the last 15 years, and the FAO, Food and Ag Organization of the World, reports 43%, and a more real number that was reported by Naylor in Nature magazine, and it's 51% of all seafood consumed in the world was cultured. So I want to emphasize that again. Half of all of the seafood consumed in the world at this point in time is cultured. Okay? This is a drawing of that. What you see is years down here in the million metric tons. And since about the mid-70s to 80s, there's been about 80 million metric tons of seafood captured, both freshwater and marine, mostly marine, but this is what's supplying food for the world. And it stays pretty steady. You got some little ups and downs there. But this isn't going to change. This isn't going to go up. We can't go up. We can't sustain that in the world. If anything, it's going to stay level or go down. And so this triangle becomes aquaculture and the need for food to feed the humans in the future. Okay? As our population grows, that dark blue aquaculture section has to increase over the course of time. And if the natural food productivity goes down, aquaculture has to increase that much more. So it's very important to understand. We raise a lot of fish in Florida, and we don't raise a lot of food fish, okay? The rest of the world raises most of our food. And we do some food fish, but by far in Florida, we don't raise enough food for ourselves. If you look at it, Asia, it's little numbers, but Asia is by far the largest producer, South America. You look at the census of aquaculture in Florida, in the States, and there was about 1.37 billion. It increased 26%, but that's still very small compared to what it is worldwide. So the U.S. is very good at developing technologies and developing methods, but we're not very good at feeding ourselves. The rest of the world, we import most of our seafood, and most of it is cultured, or half of it's cultured. Food fish was 732 million, crustaceans was 85 million, and all of it is increasing. Mollusks was 329 million. All of this was increasing. But when you start looking, this is millions, and we were talking billions and billions before for the world production. So we don't produce what we need in the United States. Florida, we'll go over this. There's lots of different products, from alligators to ornamental fish that are produced. I'm going to let Charlie do that. So why fish? Why do we want to eat fish? They have fatty acids in them. omega-3 or N3 fatty acids, which keep us heart healthy, and they're a quality source of protein. And they're supposed to reduce your cancer risk if you eat them. And none of us eat enough fish. Probably. If I went around, we don't eat what's recommended for fish. An interesting thing, when you look at other crop or other food products, cows, pigs, chickens, and fish, this is food conversion efficiency. How many pounds of food do you need to convert into meat for humans to consume? A cow needs a lot of grain and grass to make a pound of meat. They need 7.5 pounds. Pigs, 3.5. Chickens, 2.75. And it's inefficient for them to eat plants and convert it to meat. Fish, 1.5 is a good standard number, maybe as high as 2. And why is that? It's because they're in a water environment, and their waste production and waste release into the water is very energy efficient compared to what it is for cattle. And they also efficiently assimilate all the nutrients. Another is, it takes energy for a cow to stand up and fight against gravity, and a fish can stay neutrally buoyant with its swim bladder in a water column. And so he's not expending energy to sit in one place, and a cow is expending energy to stand up. So it's basically waste production and energy efficiency in how they move. And that's a big thing for agriculture to look at because it's so efficient. So lots of, I'll talk about diversity of farms. Lots of producers have aquaculture, and they also have other crops on their land. And so diversity and having, a good example is we have a large producer here in the state of catfish, and he actually produces them in Alabama. But he's also a large citrus producer and a large cattle producer. And he has said numerous times over the years, as the cattle industry wasn't as good and the citrus industry is going down, the catfish has helped his operation and helped the cash flow, and his farm does much better because of that. So diversifying your products and incorporating aquaculture into any farm is usually a good way to diversify your farm income. So as a teacher, aquaculture is very diverse. Obviously there's biology, ecology, nutrition, handling, water quality, disease, marketing. There's all the culture techniques, there's math, there's all sorts of science, there's all sorts of engineering and all of the things that they want you to teach. And there's lots of job opportunities that we can talk about later.